can you take us through that journey or share with us what estate planning exactly is or what it entails and
Sure.
why people are scared to even talk about it, you know?
Well, let's start with that second piece. I think when people hear estate planning, they think of a will and maybe in a movie where, the family has gathered around and there's the
Mhm.
reading of the will and it kind of it conjures feelings of sadness or thoughts of death. And yes, where our assets go and what happens at our passing is a part of estate planning, but it is just a piece of estate planning. There's
Mhm.
so many aspects. There's the way that you're setting up your assets from a tax perspective, income tax and estate and gift tax. There's asset protection. How are your assets titled? Are they titled in the best way to protect you in the event of a lawsuit?
Mhm.
Prenuptial agreements. What happens in the event of someone passing away during a marriage or a divorce?
There is one financial conversation most families avoid until it becomes a crisis. Not because people do not care, but because money, legacy, marriage, inheritance, and morality all carry emotions most people never learn how to navigate. And yet, we are currently living through the largest wealth transfer in the modern history. Trillions of dollars are expected to move between generations over the coming decades. But behind the legal documents and financial structures, there are very human questions. For example, what happens when couples never discuss money values? Or what happens when inheritance changes family dynamics overnight? Or what protection do people assume marriage automatically provide, but actually doesn't? So these are all the questions that kind of in the background run all the time. Today's guest brings a perspective that goes far beyond technical estate planning. Lauren Klein. She's a trust and estates attorney, law professor, co-founder of Flourish Law Group, and host of Legal Plus Wealthy podcast. Her work sits at the intersection of wealth, relations, communication, and long term legacy planning. Lauren, welcome to the Wealth Vibe Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Likewise, I'm super excited for this conversation. Our title for today is The Wealth Transfer Crisis Nobody Talks About. So, Lauren, before we get into the legal side, I really wanted to understand your human side. What first drew you into this world of estate planning and legacy conversations?
So when I went off to college many moons ago, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I actually started with a psychology degree. But then I quickly realized what I was really looking for was understanding not just how my mind worked, but how money worked. So I actually was a finance major, and around 2008, I was interning at one of the big brokerage firms in the nation. And we all know what happened in 2008, 2009. And so I decided to go to law school. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was really searching for knowledge and I really wanted to make sure that I understood money and the legalities of how business and real estate worked. I was very thirsty for that information, but I wasn't sure where it was going to take me. And I ended up taking a wills and trust class and I absolutely fell in love. And I realized it's a piece of finance, it's just from a different perspective. Then I ended up taking a tax class and I realized, oh my gosh, I love how the Internal Revenue Code works and my brain just understood it. I was very drawn to it. And
Mhm.
I thought it was very interesting how the universe kind of brought me back into the finance space just from a completely different direction. And it's brought me in many different directions over my 15-year law career. But it's been really an honor to work with clients, work with families through a lot of these topics that you brought up, during the introduction. It's not just the transfer of money. We're talking about this great wealth transfer, and that encompasses so much more than the transfer of wealth. There's so many decisions legal decisions, of course, but also emotional decisions and decisions that kind of tie to people's money stories. And so it's truly been an honor for me to be in this space and for me to work through my own money story and build wealth on my own alongside my clients.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I know most people think that real estate planning is something you deal with later in life. I wanted to hear from you. Uh, why do you believe that mindset creates problems for families or couples today, since you're in the space and you are teaching people about wealth?
I think our mindset and our perspective affects everything. So if you believe that you're not worthy of something, or for example, pretty much everyone who meets with us, even wealthy clients will say, I don't know if I have enough, or I don't know if I'm wealthy enough for this. And it's this framework that they're operating from that stops them from taking action. And so the way that I operate and what I see, even with very wealthy clients, is their mindset then dictates what they do. And so maybe they have fear around estate planning. Maybe they don't think they have enough or they're embarrassed to kind of open up what's going on, behind the scenes, whether it's money or familial disagreements, whatever it might be. But the reality is that estate planning is not just for those who are older, and it's not only just for those who are wealthy. Yes, the more your wealth grows, or the more complicated your family is, or maybe you have assets in different countries, complexities increase the need for estate planning. But I'll tell you, I just got off a call an hour ago with an 18-year-old going off to college. Her mom heard me talk about how if you're 18, your parents no longer can get access to medical information from doctors if something happens. So the reality is, starting at age 18, you need something. You need a baseline, power of attorney, healthcare surrogate, something like that. And then as your life grows and your wealth grows and your family grows, the plan might get more complex. But I think the problem is most people don't even get started because of fear, shame, or just a lack of information.
I like that lack of information. I think that's the key right here. So, can you take us through that journey or share with us what estate planning exactly is or what it entails and
Sure.
why people are scared to even talk about it, you know?
Well, let's start with that second piece. I think when people hear estate planning, they think of a will and maybe in a movie where, the family has gathered around and there's the
Mhm.
reading of the will, and it kind of it conjures feelings of sadness or thoughts of death. And yes, where our assets go and what happens at our passing is a part of estate planning, but it is just a piece of estate planning. There's
Mhm.
so many aspects. There's the way that you're setting up your assets from a tax perspective, income tax and estate and gift tax. There's asset protection. How are your assets titled? Are they titled in the best way to protect you in the event of a lawsuit?
Mhm.
Prenuptial agreements. What happens in the event of someone passing away during a marriage or a divorce? There's so many different things. Healthcare decisions.
Mhm.
Who could be guardians of your children? There's so many aspects. So I'd say at a very high level, estate planning is a set of documents and a plan. It's not just the documents that govern what happens in the event of incapacity, passing, divorce, or being in a lawsuit. So it's much more than what I think a lot of people think when they hear estate planning.
So, in the asset protection, what it entails, how can you protect the asset that, you're protecting yourself in case there's something happens?
Yeah, it's something that we talk about with clients every single day, and it's really going asset by asset with them and seeing how things are structured. So, for example, depending on the state where you live, many states, including Florida, where I'm located, have protections for your primary residence. And Florida has some of the best protections. We call it homestead in Florida.
Mhm.
Other
Mhm.
states do as well.
Mhm.
There's significant protection for your home. So that's one thing, and making sure it's titled properly. We'll see a lot of couples who maybe bought the home before they got married. And in Florida, at least, you need to do a new deed to show that
Mhm.
it's owned by spouses because there's more creditor protection. So that's an example. Also, a lot of people own their businesses in their individual names, which is very interesting, or with maybe one owner, whereas some states having two owners is more beneficial and there's more protection if there's a lawsuit. So taking a look at business interests and how those are titled. In some states, retirement accounts have more creditor protection than taxable brokerage accounts or bank accounts. So it's really going asset by asset with that client, seeing if there's any holes or issues. Another example, actually, I just met with a client recently, very, very successful doctor, and she had an airplane owned by her operating business,
Mhm.
her practice. And I said, oh my goodness, we need to get that airplane into another entity because if something happens, there's an accident with the airplane, you don't want to expose all of the assets of your business. So just to give an example, that is what you're thinking about when you look at asset protection.
Great. That's a good example, actually. I like that. But a lot of times, people think, looking at bird's eye view kind of thing, a lot of people think that when they do the estate planning, it's kind of a piece of paper, they get it done and put in the locker or the safe place somewhere, right? And then forget about it. But it's not all about that, right? It's like the execution that matters. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, this is my favorite topic, and I get very, very fired up because there's a lot of misconceptions, and there's a lot of attorneys that don't really have a full holistic approach to this. So there's a couple of things that you brought up that are so incredibly important. You could have the best trust in the world, the most beautiful trust. But if you don't retitle your assets, for example, a bank account, a brokerage account, updating life insurance beneficiaries, moving a home into a trust. There's many ways that you can retitle or fund the trust. But if you don't do that part, you're likely to have your family go through probate to get access to those assets because it's not just the creation of the trust and putting things in the trust or assigning assets into the trust. It's making sure that everything is properly titled. And unfortunately, in my industry, there's a bit of a dirty little secret that a lot of estate planning attorneys either don't assist with that or they just give a letter that explains what to do. It goes in the back of that binder that is now sitting on the shelf, gathering dust for decades. The person then passes away and things don't go according to plan because the plan was never really effective. You can have an estate plan, but it must be effective. So retitling the assets or funding the trust, those are kind of the same thing in many ways, is incredibly crucial. And this is why it's very important if you have a financial advisor or financial professional, they are in communication with your trust and estates or your estate planning attorney because they can fill out the paperwork, they can complete it. What they can't do is give legal advice. So it's really important to have the team working together. And it's really important to have an attorney that assists you and tells you exactly what you need to do so you don't get analysis paralysis and not take action. And then the other point that you brought up that is so important is what many people do, most people do, is they go see their estate planning attorney, they get the documents done, maybe they fund the trust, maybe they don't, and then they don't talk to their estate planning attorney for 20 years. What happens during that time? Maybe you buy new real estate, maybe you move into a new state, maybe you get new bank accounts, maybe you have grandchildren that you wanted to potentially provide for. Whatever changes that have happened in your life that maybe didn't in your mind trigger, hey, I need to go talk to that estate planning attorney again. Things change. And so now you have a plan that is completely outdated, does not accomplish your goals. And so it's really important, in my opinion, to meet with your estate planning attorney. We meet with our clients every single year, but at least every 3 to 5 years, because you may not know why you need to update things. You may not understand the impact of the planning on your assets because it's not what you do every day. So, so crucial making sure you fund the trust or retitle your assets and making sure that you stay in touch with your estate planning attorney. And ideally, your entire team is kind of communicating regularly.
That's true. I agree with that 100% because it's a living, breathing document. It's not like one time thing, you do it and forget it. But I know a lot of state planning attorneys, don't get me wrong, but they do not care. They just have a set one time fee They will do your estate planning and they wash their hands basically. So I think it's very important to find the right attorney who can give you the right guidance and they can stay on board, for a long time. It's a long-term relationship, even though it's going to cost you a little bit more. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I absolutely agree. And I always tell people if they're interviewing different estate planning attorneys, ask them, what is your process for retitling my assets and what is your process for staying in touch? There's different ways that it can be accomplished. Sometimes it's a membership, sometimes it's just an annual touch point that it can be complimentary. But asking those questions in advance and even maybe getting in writing what their process and procedure is incredibly important. Unfortunately, it's kind of the exception, not the norm. The norm is, very transactional, one and done. You get your fee, the client signed the documents, and there's zero follow-up. I'm
Mhm.
hoping that our industry will continue to change, especially as we move through this great wealth transfer. Otherwise, it's going to be very problematic. The probate courts are already inundated. They're already completely bogged down with matters, especially in Florida.
Mhm.
So the more that people have great trusted advisors, including an estate planning attorney, financial professional, and CPA or accountant in their corner, making sure that everything works as it should, it's honestly just going to become more and more important. And what we're also seeing is a family, if the family dynamic is amenable to this, having all of the family do their estate planning with one lawyer, so all of it flows together and it works together, and everyone knows what to expect.
And I think you mentioned earlier before the recording that you have some membership program like that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Is it like for everybody or just for the attorneys only?
I do. So it's separate from the law firm. It's a membership focused on well-being and lifestyle and money mindset for attorneys. Another dirty little secret that many people don't realize, most people say, "Oh, become a doctor or a lawyer and you think you'll be financially set." A lot of lawyers have a very um, negative money mindset. I think something happens to our brains in law school and we get very risk averse and we get very focused on protecting our clients and not protecting ourselves.
Hmm.
So I have a membership in Legal and Wealthy that is for attorneys, but
Hmm.
also for our estate planning clients. We actually have a complimentary annual touch point. Eventually, maybe we'll create some sort of membership fee structure. Right now, we've just decided for any existing clients, it's complimentary. We touch base with them annually. We send them an email. We say, hey, it's been a year or 5 years since your signing ceremony. We hope all is well. We would like to meet with you for 30 minutes to see if there's any changes. And maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just asking how their grandchildren are or how their summer, in Spain was, whatever it might be. But it's nice because we stay in touch with each other. We keep updated on what's going on in their lives. And, you understand it's when you have these relationships, you really get to know your clients very well. You form sometimes friendships, sometimes other forms of relationships, but you get very up
Hmm.
close and personal. And it's nice just to know what's going on in everyone's lives.
That's true. So let's talk about the wealth transfer. I know we've been hearing a lot lately that the largest wealth transfer in the history. What does that really mean, Or what does the actually mean in real life for families over the next decade or two? What it's going to look like?
Yeah, so I'm sure people have heard about it, read about it, but essentially, the great wealth transfer is the greatest transfer of wealth that we know of in history. And a lot of the funds are going to be coming from baby boomers who are passing away. And there's trillions of dollars anticipated coming down from the higher generation down to the lower generations, Gen X, millennials, Gen Zs, so on, and whatever the next one is after that, when my kids are, I don't even know, so on and so forth. And there's going to be a massive transfer of wealth, and it's a great opportunity in many ways for people to learn about money and
Hmm.
to kind of analyze what are their money stories, how do they deal with money, how are they making decisions, how comfortable are they having conversations within their family about money. Because what I've seen typically with our older clients is sometimes they're very tight-lipped about what they have going on. They're not sharing with their children because it's just not a muscle that they're used to exercising.
Mhm.
So in many ways, it's an opportunity. In many ways, it's also, I think, it's going to be problematic because, like I said earlier, unfortunately, a lot of clients, a lot of people, a lot of Americans and outside of the US too go through probate, which in a nutshell is a court process if you own assets in your individual name. And what we're seeing is, I think the statistics say it's like between like 25 and 35% of Americans have an estate plan based on the studies that have been done. But from our experience, I think it's really more like 10% or less
Even lower.
have an effective estate plan, right? Because things like a will does not avoid probate. It just tells the probate court where your assets go. So I think the more information that people can soak in about how estate planning works, and other aspects as well. I know your show is about wealth, so understanding how are things titled? Am I going to get a step up in basis when mom or dad or spouse or whoever you're inheriting from passes away? What does that mean? How does that work? For example, if someone inherits an appreciable asset directly from someone or through a revocable trust, they get a brand new basis equal to the date of death of the person who passed away. That can be very beneficial to avoiding capital gains. So it's starting to get used to the lingo and the discussions because what we're going to see, unfortunately, is probate courts completely backlogged even further than they are now. A lot of money being lost to fees, attorney's fees, court fees, and taxes because oftentimes the structure of the family is not being analyzed properly. And so they're not being advised properly. So it's not to be doom and gloom. I think it's a great opportunity to open up that conversation with your grandparents or your parents or your spouse or your siblings or your children and say, hey, as a family, we need to make sure that we maybe don't understand everything. That's okay, but have professionals around us that will explain it to
Guide
us,
us.
will help us
Mhm.
understand, and will potentially even mediate conversations amongst the family members.
Exactly. That's a really good idea. You were talking about the generations right now. So let me ask you about this question about the generations. Have you noticed generational difference in how younger couple versus the older couples think about money or legacy?
Oh, yes. So a lot of times what we see with our older clients is they don't share with their families, they don't share with their children about what is actually going on. So there's surprises. A lot of the time, the male, if it's a heterosexual relationship, is really kind of managing everything. And of course, generalization, not every couple is like that. But oftentimes we're seeing, kind of the male figure is handling the financials, but then statistically the husband passes away first and then the surviving spouse, the wife, feels very
Mhm.
there's a lack of confidence and there's fear because they didn't have to deal with it before or they didn't
Mhm.
know what was going on or maybe they weren't on bank accounts and now they're locked out and those accounts are frozen until the probate is finalized, which can take years. So we see a lot of kind of keeping things under the belt, so to speak, and not sharing and kind of not even sharing between the spouses and dividing that responsibility versus what we see with younger couples. A lot of people are getting married later in life and they have assets that they're bringing into the marriage, and so oftentimes they're entering into prenuptial agreements before they get married, which kind of forces them to put everything on the table to have these types of discussions about what do I have and what would happen in the event of divorce or death. We're seeing a lot more conversations with parents and children, and we're seeing the younger generations encourage the older to talk about all of this and to explain to them why it's important. It's not just a money grab or they're being nosy about, mom and dad's money. It's truly let's make sure that as a family we have wealthy behaviors and that everything flows to the surviving family members or loved ones in the best possible way. And I will say, especially if it's a blended family, things can get much more complicated, and you really need to have someone who's breaking it all down and has a plan for all the different contingencies.
Yeah, that's so true. So let me ask you this golden question here, Lauren. When wealth passes from one generation to the next, what determines whether it becomes a gift that strengthens a family or a burden that divides it?
I mean, I might be biased because of what I do, but I do think that a solid estate plan that has been well thought out passes things privately without the need for probate, without a lot of money lost in taxes and family fighting. We see it so much where there wasn't a transparency about what's happening, or maybe a family member was cut out, or their share was reduced, or they weren't named as personal representative, or whatever it is that's going on, behind the scenes. When all of that is anticipated and well thought out, it can't avoid all fighting and all litigation, but it can certainly mitigate it. So from my perspective, having a good estate plan is important. The other thing that is ancillary to that is making sure that there is a place that lists all of the assets. My law partner was a corporate fiduciary with one of the largest trust companies in the US for many years, and she called it her treasure hunt. Right. She would go into their office, their home. She would try to put together the puzzle of where did mom and dad have accounts, and where's the real estate, and how is it titled, and who handled the lawn, and who's going to come do that in the meantime while the probate is ongoing, because unfortunately, most of the time there's probate because the plan is not done right. So having a list of the assets, how they're titled, if they're in a trust, if there's a beneficiary named on that, bank account, brokerage account, life insurance, whatever it might be, having everything in one place is so important. Even passwords and who handles the maintenance of the home or the vacation home or whatever it might be, where are the assets located, or the documents located. Having everything organized and easily located is honestly one of the biggest gifts you could give your family.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So, one last question. If someone is listening today and has avoided estate planning completely because it feels overwhelming, what is the first simple step they should take?
I would say I would schedule consultations with 2 to 3 estate planning attorneys in your state or in your area. A lot of estate planning attorneys will do a complimentary consultation or a low cost consultation. Get a feel for who you like in your area. Ask your friends and family for referrals, because you want it to be someone that you feel comfortable with, that you like, and that you can ask questions of, and they won't make you feel stupid or talk down to you. You also want someone, of course, who's a specialist and focused on estate planning, not someone who does DUIs and all this other stuff. So that would be one of the first things that you can do, honestly. And listening to podcasts like this. I mean, I love that you bring guests on that talk about different topics, tax strategy, real estate planning, because the more that you get to know the lingo and you get to understand, you're going to build up your own confidence. And I think it will also help you kind of overcome some of that misinformation that, oh, I'm not old enough, or I don't have enough assets. It's kind of like before I bought my first piece of real estate, I think I listened to like 200, 300 episodes about real estate investing, because it started to build my confidence and I started to understand the language. And then I felt more comfortable making offers and running deals and things like that. So get comfortable, meet with a few different estate planning attorneys, and then just act. You have to just take action, because we can talk about things and read about things and analyze things all day long. But if you don't actually take action, you're not going to move forward. So I always say, perfect is the enemy of good. Just get it done. Just get it done. And you won't regret it. Every time someone finishes and they sign and they fund their trust and we say see you in a year, I can just see that peace that they have, because they know things are planned. They know now their family knows where everything is. They know their team is all talking to each other. It is such a relief. It really is.
Thank you so much for saying that. Just do it. I think that's the key right here, Lauren. This is such a, I think, meaningful conversation today. I really love it, whatever you're sharing with us. And I think people often think that wealth planning is not just uh, something that they have to do it day one. I don't know, maybe it's a lack of knowledge. But I think in today's episode, you highlighted how much is about having that communication with the right person, or having the clarity, or having the right relationships. That is much more important to get to your estate planning. I think that's the first step that will prepare you once you have the clarity what you're doing. And before we wrap up, I do have a rapid fire round. I have 5 questions for you. It's very simple day-to-day questions. So it's a surprise questions for you. So you're gonna answer it in one word or one sentence only, whatever comes to your mind first. Are you ready?
I'm excited. Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
So what is one habit you will never give up?
Ooh, meditation.
Oh, I love that. If you could instantly master one completely unrelated skill tomorrow, what would it be?
So I've had my firm now for 3.5 years, and I'm still learning how to master hiring and delegating.
That's the hard one, delegating, especially, right? Because it's your firm. You just feel like it's my baby. Nobody can do better than me. Been
It's
there, done
true.
that.
It's true. I have that story, but I know I have to get over that story, in order to continue to grow and scale.
Uh, okay, so the next one is what book would you recommend to everyone at least once?
Oh my gosh. I think one of my favorite books I've ever read, and I was so lucky to meet the author late last year in a mastermind group that I'm in, is Rich AF. It's actually not AF, but
Mhm,
Rich as F, by
mhm.
Amanda Francis, who is someone that I greatly respect. She has completely changed the way that I view money, my money story. She's really helped me unlock so much as far as my wealth building journey goes and entrepreneurial journey. So I highly recommend it. She has a written book and an audio, and I have both. It's fantastic. It will change the way you see money.
Great. So the next question is, if your life had a warning label, what would it say?
Ooh. I think the warning label is don't take advice from someone who is not living the life that you want.
100%. I love that. So the last question, what is your wealth vibe?
I would say, after walking away from a high salary and a partnership role at a big law firm, my wealth vibe is having the freedom to build my life and my career and my family in a way that is aligned with who I am and who I'm becoming, and not living anyone else's path, even if that path looks amazing and is basically what I thought was my dream life. Having the courage to step away and buy back my own time is completely my wealth vibe.
Wow, I love that. And alignment is the key. You said it very well. So thank you again for joining me on the Wealth Vibe Show. This conversation was such an important reminder that wealth is not about accumulation, it's about alignment and communication. And the key takeaway for our listener is real legacy is not built through documents alone, it's built through intentional conversations, clarity, and making sure the people we love are protected long before a crisis ever happens. So, Lauren, thank you again so much. And if people wanted to learn more about your work, how can they connect with you?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. One of the best places to connect with me is on Instagram at lawyer Lauren Klein, and that then feeds to Flourish Law Group and Legal and Wealthy, or flourishlawgroup.com. We are only licensed in Florida, but we're always happy to make connections with attorneys in other jurisdictions. So if someone's listening in another state and they need a referral to another estate planning attorney, always happy to help within our network.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. So stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep building your wealth vibe. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Vibe Show. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget your free gift. Download the Busy Professional's Guide to Real Estate Investing at loombainvest.com. See you next time with another amazing guest and another powerful conversation.